Hello, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion co-hosted by Fashion Revolution and the British Council. I am Pooja Srinivas from Fashion Revolution, and we are glad to bring to you a panel discussion on how can crafts shape environmental, social, and cultural landscapes in fashion. We have invited several experts from the craft ecosystem to talk about this. I will introduce them to you shortly, but before that, I invite Ruchira Das, Director of Arts India, British Council, to share a few words with us. Over to you, Ruchira.
Thank you, Pooja. Once again, welcome to everyone who's joined us today. And thank you, Fashion Revolution India, for putting together this brilliant panel. Before we begin, I thought I'd take a moment to talk about our association and the work that we've done together. So in 22-23, British Council had commissioned the Crafting Connections. Some of you might be aware of that, a series of consultations with stakeholders across the value chain of craft in collaboration with Fashion Revolution India to bring to light the connection between crafts, climate crisis, and the potential to inspire a climate-positive fashion and textile industry. The resulting stakeholder insight report, it's called Craft in the Age of Climate Crisis, Climate Resilience Through Craft at Paths to Sustainable Fashion in India, offers anecdotal evidence alongside key recommendations for the craft and fashion sector. At British Council India, we look at catalyzing more action around our shared global challenges and seeing how arts and culture can shape that narrative. And in India, this report that Fashion Revolution India helped in putting together has been instrumental in informing our flagship program in sustainable fashion called New Landscapes, which we are delivering in partnership with Fashion, Textile and Technology Institute, University of Arts, London. We have just selected the cohort and you will get to know about it soon. We should be making the announcement by next week or latest by the end of the month. It's called New Landscapes, and it is an exciting cohort of Indian SMEs who are collaborating with their counterparts in the UK to develop R&D solutions for sustainable fashion and textiles. My colleague will share the link on the screen, and if you just follow our work, I'm sure you'll get to know more about the program and the cohort. And so thank you for the report that you helped put together, Fashion Revolution India. The report not only engaged the attention of the sector, but also thanks to you, we were able to present it at COP28. And I'm delighted to share that we'll soon be able to offer the report in Hindi, Bengali, and Tamil. And we'll be sharing these versions on our website, and we'll look at you for, making,
We lost you there, Ruchira.
I don't think she's here. Achal, would you like to complete that thought, or we can wait for Ruchira to join back in?
She just messaged me saying she has been removed by the host for the meeting. Should I ask her to try and rejoin?
Yes, please. I don't know what happened.
So everyone, we'll also be sharing a link to the Craft in the Age of Climate Crisis report. So if you wish to read it, it will be on chat, shared by our team. Okay, so we have people coming in from Netherlands, India, Calcutta.
Hi, Pooja, can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
So sorry, I'm not sure what happened. I just got a message that you've been moved from the meeting. But yes, all I wanted to say is please share the report for wider access, and over to you, Shruti.
Sure, thanks, Ruchira. So yeah, Shruti, we'd like you to share a few words as well next. But before that, an introduction. Shruti Singh, everyone, is the country head for Fashion Revolution India and spearheaded the Craft in the Age of Climate Crisis roundtable dialogues and report, which have been funded by British Council. So Shruti, over to you. Please tell us a little about the report that inspired this panel discussion.
Thank you, Pooja. Hi, everyone. So happy to have all of you here and such an excitement for this topic. As Ruchira mentioned, this was a project that started in 2022. It's called Craft in the Age of Climate Crisis. And it started almost as a curiosity or an ethos into like, how does craft relate to climate crisis and how does climate crisis impact craftspeople? And that took us to 5 different cities within India with different stakeholders across roundtables to understand from them how they believe that climate change has impacted the nature of their work, how also craft has inherently had linkages to building a better, slow, handmade, a more sustainable way of production. This is not to say that craft is the absolute answer, because there are a lot of things that have percolated through fast fashion into craft and a lot of things to be solved. But what we understood was that through the stakeholder insights report, we need a deeper understanding of how the craft ecosystem can facilitate a transition to an industry where slow fashion, handmade products, craft, culture defines the way we produce and consume and our lifestyle choices. We took this dialogue to COP28 as well under the same topic and the narrative. And many of you who are here today have been part of this journey with us since 2022, unraveling this dialogue, understanding the connection of craft and climate crisis with social, environmental, and cultural landscapes within the fashion industry. And we're very happy that this report has been read by people across countries. It has helped shape a lot of dialogues, and we are able to talk about this conversation more in different forums. And that was the actual idea behind starting this dialogue by Fashion Revolution India and British Council. Today's dialogue builds upon the insights from the stakeholder report and to understand how different ecosystem actors can respond to where we are today and how can we all collaborate, how can we find synergies within our work. And I'm thrilled to introduce the moderator, Pooja Srinivas, who will be taking us through this panel. She leads partnerships and fundraising at Fashion Revolution India and is a clean tech entrepreneur. As you all know, Fashion Revolution is a volunteer-led movement where all of us work as volunteers. She is the founder of All Matter, a B2B platform focused on sustainable raw material procurement and supply chain decarbonization. Over to you, Pooja.
Thank you, Shruti. Hey, everyone. I'm pleased to be moderating this discussion because it's of interest to me, not just as a fashion revolutionary, but even as a clean tech entrepreneur, like Shruti just mentioned. I believe that this topic is especially relevant now as the fashion industry grapples with pressures to manage its environmental and social impact. Can craft-led fashion enterprises propagate sustainable practices across the industry? Can they gain a larger share in the fashion supply chain? What needs to be done to sustain and scale these enterprises? Well, we aim to elicit some insights on these topics during today's discussion. On this panel, we have invited change makers and thought leaders.
हाँ मने तू तो ईयरफोन लगाएगा
Maybe
I
please.
request everyone else to go on mute, please. Like I was saying, on this panel, we have change makers, thought leaders to reflect on themes like ecosystem assistance, innovation, investment, education, and technology that play a key role in the growth of the sector. I would like to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed panelists as their introductions get shared on screen for you. First, we have Dr. Toolika Gupta, Director of the Indian Institute of Crafts and Design. Dr. Toolika brings over 25 years of experience in design. Her focus lies on revival of lost knowledge in the realm of crafts and on building a strong academic background for craft education. She has been instrumental in setting up progressive upskilling and exposure opportunities at IICD, like Sanghoshti, an international conference, and a craft incubator program in collaboration with IIM Udaipur. She is passionate about strengthening craft education, promoting artisanal livelihoods, and conducting extensive research in Indian fashion history. Next, we have Priya Krishnamoorthy, founder and chief catalyst of 200 Million Artisans. Priya is an accomplished broadcast journalist and impact strategist who is passionate about bringing creativity and culture in conversation with sustainable development. Her organization, 200 Million Artisans, is an impact-first ecosystem enabler for craft-led enterprises. Through platforms like Business of Handmade and Hula Conclave, 200 Million Artisans bridges gaps in knowledge networks and capital to accelerate sustainable development and empower India's craft-led enterprises. Our next panelist is Shruti Goyal, Director, Impact and Partnerships, Upaya Social Ventures. Shruti is an impact management professional with 15 years of experience. She specializes in innovative finance and private sector partnerships across sectors in Asia and Africa. She served as the global portfolio lead for the impact program by the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. This flagship program provides grants and technical assistance for innovative solutions that address barriers to the supply of impact capital in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. We are also excited to have Suruchi Khubchandani, curator of the Craft X Climate series at Creative Dignity. Suruchi is a consultant specializing in craft and climate resilient development models. Previously, she led special projects at The Voice of Fashion and spearheaded CSR initiatives at Yes Bank within the crafts and heritage sector. Suruchi has also taught at Pearl Academy and the College of Arts, Delhi. She has authored numerous articles and white papers on sustainability, crafts, and design. And then we have Vijaya Krishnappa, who is the co-founder of Kosha.ai, a startup providing supply chain transparency solutions in the craft sector. His company addresses the problem of trust deficit in the craft sector. He holds a degree from XLRI India and brings over 16 years of experience in the fashion sector and management consulting space. Dear panelists, it's a pleasure to have you join us in this discussion. Our audience includes sustainability advocates, conscious consumers, policymakers, craft entrepreneurs, and enthusiasts from around the world. We hope to create an impactful and insightful conversation with you over the next 60 minutes. So let's get started. We want to talk about how craft enterprises can build scalable models in the fashion industry while upholding environment, social, and cultural stewardship. So my first question is to Dr. Toolika on the upskilling needs of craft enterprises of the future. Dr. Toolika, how can institutions like IICD enable artisans, designers, and craft entrepreneurs to incorporate sustainability principles effectively?
Thank you, Pooja. Let me begin first by thanking British Council and Fashion Revolution to come up with such a dialogue. And I hope that people who have associated today will listen to this dialogue and we'll take it further. So thanks to Shruti, thanks to Pooja, to Achal, Ruchira, and the team. So your question was that how do we look at the future of fashion, sustainability? What do institutes like IICD, how can institutes like IICD, sort of put this together? So I think institutions in the entire country or anywhere, the important thing about institutions is that they're like bridges. They connect people from all over. And what we teach at IICD, design, of course, is the focus, but sustainability lies within. So, looking at sustainability goals of 2030 or even otherwise, we emphasize that students have a very, they have to work with artisans to learn the technique, to learn how the maker makes something. They have to work with designers and understand design so that they become designers themselves. But then the underlying fact is that we have to learn how the country has survived for so many years with sustainable practices, with the ability to think beyond only new, the ability to do maybe collaborative consumption, the ability to consume less, the ability to create something that lasts longer, is sustainable. And when we talk about sustainability, it includes environmental sustainability along with economic sustainability of people who are involved in the activity of producing the materials used for fashion, clothing, or any kind of utility items, let me put it like that, whether it's furniture, whether it's clothing, or whatever we look at. So, we don't look at things in a very fast fashion kind of mode. And we also, so this is what I think institutes can do when they train younger people, when they train the ones who are coming to study and to take design to another level. The idea is that they understand that it's not important that you only have to use new material. You can use a lot of material that's waste lying around you, to identify that material, to take it to another level, to be able to create newer utility objects, which can, and also to be able to create a supply chain for them, not just create one object and leave it there. And that is why these linkages, these bridges are very important between different stakeholders. I'd like to give a few examples. I often give, these examples, but I think they're very interesting for people to know. Like one of our alumni used chicken feather to create a new yarn. Now, this is innovation. This also is the need of the hour: sustainability, recycling of material, and to create better products. And then when we come to upcycling, we have other alumni who've used, waste from whether packets, Tetra Paks, things, and recycle them to create better products. So I think this is where institutions come in. To answer your question again, this is where institutions come in, that they can give an opportunity for R&D. They can give an opportunity to students to sort of look at avant-garde, as we say, to create things for future, and then to also see how it can be replicated or made possible with the other stakeholders. So I think that's what IICT does. We actively engage with artisans, we engage with designers, and our students continuously experiment with newer products, with material that can be upcycled or recycled, to take that forward. Yeah.
Thank you. Speaking of opportunities, I think, Priya, the next question would be to you. In the recent report, which is on financing a handmade revolution published by your organization, the craft sector is referred to as a potential sunrise industry. So what are the factors or macro trends that you think are shaping the growth of this industry? And what do you think are the barriers that may impede it?
Thank you, Pooja, and thank you, everyone, British Council, Fashion Revolution, for hosting this conversation. I'll jump straight to the answer. So I'd perhaps even start with a question to, the folks in the audience. In the last few years, and perhaps I've seen it because sometimes I passively scroll Instagram, like many of us do. But what we have seen in the past few years, perhaps in the last, 5 to 10 years, with the technology really into our lives and technology taking over, mostly at what people like us, smaller entrepreneurs, brands are producing. We are now happy to move beyond the Zaras and the H&Ms of the world. Of course, they still remain aspirational to a large extent. But in the last 10 years, one of the big things that I, at least, perhaps we would have doubts about it, but what we've seen is there is a massive push to reclaim our identity as young people in India, which means we're also now tapping into indigenous brands, local brands with slogans like vocal for local coming in. We are actively now engaging with a sort of Indian ethnic conversation. An Indian cultural conversation, and that spreads across, what we consume. Suddenly, we are seeing a whole lot of vegan millet, channels making millet dosas. Millet wasn't so exciting 5 years back or even 3 years back, but today everybody wants to have a millet dosa because of whatever reason, and that also gets reflected in the clothing that we wear, in the jewelry that we wear, in how we sort of also present ourselves and present around as being global Indian citizens. That is one, I think, big change that has happened. Now, because of that, there are two things that have happened. One, the consumer is changing, which means now the consumer is willing to look and engage with local brands and local enterprises that are not only making in India, but also, pushing the India argument. The second thing that is happening is there are many, many young entrepreneurs that are also building brands and building small businesses, not just in the big cities, ironically, in the tier 2, tier 3 towns as well, where this kind of production and all of that, it is getting driven. Last but not the least, what I'm also sensing, and again, this is my personal sort of understanding of, because we work with a lot of students and people who come, the younger generation, the millennial and Gen Z generation, a lot of us have had the opportunity to also study out. We've studied in India, then we've gone out, we've studied outside. We have a certain amount of global exposure. And now we are coming back and say, okay, but what is our identity in this global sort of narrative? And can we now reclaim that identity in our own unique ways and have our own unique voice when we are not only building brands, but also driving advocacy, but also making consumption choices? Now, our report is saying, is coming back to our report, is one is there is this massive surge in demand for local for vocal, which also means a lot of enterprises are willingly engaging with the craft ecosystem and actively wanting to engage with the craft ecosystem. That's one piece. The second thing that we are seeing is that a lot of the brands, or at least the ones that we mapped for profit enterprises, were set up in the last 10 years. So 2010 onwards is the bulk of when the MSME landscape in craft sort of got activated. However, the perception in the minds of policymakers and investors and so on and so forth is that, oh, craft ecosystem is a non-profit ecosystem, does not want to engage in building profitable, ambitious brands, is not engaging with the language of innovation. And therefore, that perception is in fact working against the hungriness of the enterprises that are currently building brands and craft-led enterprises in the country today. So in some sense, we are also doing this service to enterprises that are actually coming up with fabulous solutions, which includes, the kinds that Toolika mentioned, or even the one that, say, Vijay is building. Now, those kind of, stories are somewhere getting lost. The older narrative still in some ways is prevalent, at least in the policy and the investment ecosystem, which is doing disservice to this amazing community of people that is potentially can change the narrative. Now, why this can be a sunrise industry? To answer that question is if we have to look at it from from a policy lens and a 30,000 feet lens. Let's understand, and I'm going to actually talk about which a friend of mine recently mentioned. He talked about three kinds of India. He said there is India 1, India 2, and India 3. The India 1 are people like us who are actually, who have the expendable income, who are, ordering on Swiggy, Zomato, and, yada, yada. We are downloading all kinds of apps of the world. And then that India 1 is sort of has expendable income, but it's a very small minority technically. But the people who are then working and the apps and so on and so forth are building, they are using the India 2 folks, which, falls into a certain per capita income bracket. Now, the India 1 and India 2 are basically where startups and enterprises are currently existing. However, the size of India 1 and India 2 is that the size of India 3. However, there is absolutely no services or any kind of thinking or startups or enterprise building that is happening that is catered towards India 3, which is where the informal economy exists, which is where our rural producers exist, which is where a lot of the communities that all of us work with exist and thrive, operate within. However, nothing is being customized for them and the unique needs of these informal communities that are spread all across India, where the per capita income is currently less than 1.5 lakhs. However, where the craft sector sort of becomes important is the enterprises then that who are then engaging with the communities on ground are actually engaging and building solutions while taking India 3 together, while also engaging with the 2 and the 1. Now, for a country that requires jobs, for a country that the job crisis is a real crisis for us. We need, some crazy amounts of jobs. However, the business models that currently exist in the mainstream ecosystems do not take into account informality. Do not take into account that 50% of the rural communities are actually women who can't step out of their homes or on most occasions to actually take up a factory job. Now, that is where the enterprises that are emerging in the craft sector are not only navigating this informality, taking jobs where jobs are required, creating that kind of new pathways and new kinds of business models that can potentially change how, we build, a $5 trillion economy. But that is where we see the potential of this becoming a sunrise sector, because not only is it creating new business models that are relevant to India, it is creating jobs that are relevant to this India 3, which is currently completely excluded. And it is also creating aspirational pathways for the youth and many other communities, women, youth, marginalized communities that are traditionally sort of, get left behind, in the kind of mainstream enterprise ecosystem that you and I engage in. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thanks, Priya. So craft enterprises are able to take along all the three types of Indias along with them and create opportunities and aspirational pathways. What about investors? My next question is to Shruti Goel. Shruti, would you be able to tell us what are the kind of metrics that you consider when investing in craft-led ventures? Are impact investors being just as inclusive? Over to you.
Thanks, Pooja, and thanks for this opportunity. And just to put things in context, because I think my introduction was a bit dated. I lead impact and partnerships at Upaya Social Ventures, and we invest in early stage for-profit companies as equity investors. And 1/3 of our portfolio is currently formed of handmade or crafts businesses in India. Now, to that question, Pooja, what I'll do is I'll take a step back and just walk everyone through the journey of Upaya, how we start. We did not start with saying we will target crafts businesses. We started with saying we are impact first investors. We want to address poverty. And we want to address poverty by supporting, financing any company business model for profit, which can create jobs at scale and good jobs, meaningful jobs at scale for the poor, which helps these poor people living in poverty, to create a pathway out of that for themselves and their next generations. That's how we started, with money in our hand, going around finding companies. We started with this, and by default, we ended up finding companies where, and unfortunately, because the rural artisans in India are living in poverty, and we found companies which are trying to create those solutions to bring the artisans to the fore, to bridge that market linkage, have that kind of wealth creation percolate to the artisans as well. And that is how our portfolio grew organically than by design towards this sector. But now this is one of our strong pathways to address poverty, as well as we are seeing all the effects that are mentioned in the report that Shruti mentioned about how they are also at the receiving end of climate change, but we are seeing potential in them also being part of the solution. The other work stream that is now closing the loop for us is our investments the same way in waste management. The way it happened that we started working with companies working with waste pickers, and we invested in them. And today last week, we have launched a technical assistance facility on textile waste management to say that can we add to the incomes of waste workers who have been they've been incentivized on, say, dry waste management now. Then came plastics to say, can we add a premium and say plastic sorting can be, so can we build a market around textile waste is what we are trying to now incentivize through our concessionary capital, that we as impact first investors are ready to take the risk, provided the model is able to create good jobs, good quality jobs for the poor. And we have very, very specific metrics on how we measure job quality there. We measure it through 5 dimensions that we talk about, which is how inclusive are these jobs? Who gets these jobs? Are women getting these jobs, or who gets the jobs created? What is the income quality? What is the support at work? What are the benefits at work, both mandatory by law and non-mandatory, which the entrepreneur, by internalizing the whole ethos of craft sector, is able to provide to the artisan, to the job holder. And I'll come to job holder definition as well. And financial resilience is the 5th dimension. So, and these are the metric that we measure on our own. We put in our own money to do primary surveys of every company that we invest in. And we go on to the artisans or to the job holders with whom we work in. And when I say job holder, addressing the whole question that 90% of India's jobs are informal, and our investments are in informality. Oftentimes, we are asked questions about, so can you, from our LPs or from our international donors, will say, can you establish how you are converting informality to formality? But the metric to convert, so we said, yes, we are. But the metric is very different from what it is in the West. We cannot convert a job to a 9-to-5 job to establish informal. You know that an informal job is converted to formality. The jobs that artisans do are a family profession. How do you count a job is made by, is it a woman job holder or a man job holder? Do we really want to do that? So the system pushes us to kind of bifurcate it into a system that the finance world understands, because that is a binary. And we are trying to make that language, that vocabulary, talk to a vocabulary which talks in terms of ecosystems and communities and interwoven relationships. So this is where Upaya stands in between, where we are trying to design financing instruments which are more risk-taking and which can talk to the enterprise's need rather than the vice versa. But I'll just pause here and back to you, Pooja.
Thanks, Shruti. I'll pick up on what you mentioned earlier about how this sector, the people who are participating in this sector, are themselves also affected by climate change. Right? So I'll address that to Shruti Kupchandani. Shruti, could you share a few notable examples from your research for CraftX Climate on how craft communities are navigating the impacts of climate change?
Thank you, Pooja, for that question. And thank you, Shruti and British Council for organizing this and bringing us together. Our journey in the realm of environmental assessment through CraftX Climate, which is an initiative run by Creative Dignity in the craft sector, has been illuminating, to say the least. It has emerged as a platform to map and organize knowledge around best practices and create climate resilient pathways. And this is against this growing conundrum of and a parallel reality, if one can say, of depleting resources, uncontrollable factors like climate crisis, development models that are working against the region's carrying capacity, or rampant greenwashing. There are many. we've had the opportunity through this platform to understand the complex terrain of economic progress and ecological equilibrium by delving into several bioregions and allied value chains. So if I have to give you an example, it could be Pashmina value chain in Changtang, or block printing in Sanganer and Kala Dera, or Eri silk in Loharghat forest range, Assam, and so on and so forth. Now, in terms of understanding climate navigation, let me talk about two bioregions which have had historic pottery connections. And it dates back to Indus Valley civilization, Varak, which is in Maharashtra, and Kutch, which is in Gujarat, as we know. Now, at the current point of time, they are facing these pressing challenges, such as raw material scarcity, deteriorating quality of raw material due to increasing soil salinity, and that's accelerated by erratic rainfall patterns. Plus, there is a stress of fueling the kilns. So, and they're doing it because with industrial waste, which is readily accessible. So, of course, now we've also understood, within this landscape, there is collective action that can help them navigate these challenges. So when I say collective action, I mean, community, artists, technology providers like Kosha, and scientists and ecosystem enablers coming together. So it's a machinery that can act. We've understood that there is a potential of scientific solution making when one looks at, communities engagement for and, engaging in environment stewardship. And it has been explored beautifully in one of the recent projects of creative dignity called Lost and Found. It was undertaken to document diverse geological soil compositions of the Indian peninsula. And we have to understand this kind of study hasn't been done as of now. So, with this kind of initiative, we entered in this area as well, where, soil was analyzed from Indo-Gangetic plains to Western Ghats to Deccan Plateau. And one understood that, the soil properties, when you analyze it, when you experiment with it, it can create novel materials that plays on the combined strength of soils, let's say from Varak to Tuna to Fatehganj to Kutch. And these mixtures, there is workable proof now that, when they are combined to a certain proportion, and that's, of course, scientifically done, then it has enhanced the workability of the soil, and, it has also refined the texture, paving way for scalable solutions. And this has not been a lone quest by Creative Dignities, since we believe in mutualism. There is collective intelligence that has been harnessed amongst, grassroots organizations like Khamir or RUTAG, which is a technology incubator housed within IIT Delhi. And they've refined kilns in Kutch, which not only reduces the fuel consumption up to 40%, but also, through this experiment created solutions to reduce breakage of the pot within the kiln. And, we've assessed that that was up to 55%. So it is that high. So such plugins not only look at environmental sustainability, but they also look at ecological sustainability. And now, pushing the narrative forward, when one talks about scalability, these solutions can also be pushed towards the sustainable architectural projects where, terracotta can be used as filler and could be a robust alternative to cement, which we know is highly carbon intensive in its production. And then, of course, it also strengthens the regional economy. And when we speak of climate crisis or environmental stressors, there isn't one factor or a linear strategy at play here. So does the climate impact sustenance of value chain, or is it that the human-centric growth model stress the biosphere? It could be land, water, or livestock management. I'll give you another example, and just to also shift this discussion towards the producer responsibility, and that being a very powerful tool in terms of, need assessment and solution making along with the community. A case in point being must resist dyeing and printing cluster in Kala Dera, which is 42 kilometers away from Jaipur. And we spoke about it in our last convening. So these clusters, which work with block printing at the pre-production level to prepare the textile, the value chain is highly water intensive. An average unit uses around 10,000 to 35,000 liters of water daily in this process. And the water tables in Kala Dera and Sanganer have gone as low as 750 meters. So it's not only, and so you have to understand that it's 3 decades of water consumption that has led us to this point. So what has happened here is, and we assessed this very interesting best practice where, you know, a group of change agents came together. So social enterprise like Bindas Unlimited, which is led by Meeta Mastani, a Rainwater Foundation, which is BPCP Rainwater Foundation, Manthan Kotri, which is an NGO that works out of Ajmer, and a private, you know, artisan-led studio, Chaubandi, plus the community. And what they did together in 2021 was create two kind of facilities, which is one is rainwater harvesting and other is rainwater harvesting and other being water recharge. And the beneficiary count here being more than 80 people. Now, the financial investment in this case also was shared by all the stakeholders. So when one talks about the economics of it and the ecological viability of it, you know, these factors are really important. We've estimated through this project analysis that 7.3 million liters of water is reused every year. And through rainwater harvesting, they've redirected 8 lakh liters of water every year to the ground, which otherwise was running along, you know, the surface. So collaborative work with, you know, formative support from grassroots organizations, that kind of thinking can create a feasible pathway for communities to navigate climate and resource-induced complications. I hope that answers your question to a certain extent.
It does, and thanks for the examples cited as well, Suruchi. Since we were talking about the opportunities for innovation to alleviate the typical challenges that the craft sector is facing, I'll now pose my question to Vijay. So Vijay, what kind of a role do you see technology playing in being able to address some of these challenges that the craft sector is facing? And how does your organization work to be able to address this?
Yeah, thank you, Pooja. And yeah, acknowledge British Council as well as Fashion Revolution for organizing this session. So before I answer about how technology is important, I just wanted to bring forth some of the challenges which are faced by the craft sector. Since, you know, today's session is about environmental and social and cultural, I wouldn't talk about cultural much, but yeah, at least environmental and social is something that I would like to highlight. So, so in terms of craft market performance, how is the craft market performing, right? Everyone knows this. There's a huge challenge in terms of marketing crafts. Okay, so when it's a market, one is demand side and then on the supply side. Demand side, so as you have seen, you know, as the economy of the country has been growing in last couple of decades, in terms of affordability, people are willingness to spend, it has increased. So, but however, on the supply side, there are huge challenges. You know, let me share my experience from recently in last couple of months back in February. There was an event happening in Delhi. It's called Suraj Kund Mela. It's one of the large international Mela. So I was curious. I was hearing about this for last a few years, and I thought I'll visit that. So while I was visiting, I was at a place in a small shop where the weaver was selling Paithani sari. Okay, it was double ikat. Which costed about 150,000 rupees. Sorry, 150,000 rupees. So, so this then suddenly a person came and she was inquiring, saying that what is this sari? He said it's a Paithani sari and it costs about 1.5 lakh. So she then touched the sari and said, "What is it? You know, is it handmade?" He said, "Yes, it's handmade and it's pure silk." Then he said, "It doesn't." She said, "It doesn't look like handmade for me. Okay, I can touch the fabric and I can say it's handmade or not." Okay, then he said, "Yes, madam, this is not handmade." And later, what is the material? He said silk. Then she said, "No, it doesn't look like silk." He said, "No, it's not silk." So finally, she was kind of felt embarrassed and she went off. But the weaver was sharing, "Sir, how do I convince these people, saying that this is pure Paithani and this is, say, craft and this is made of silk?" So he had no kind of tool to say or sell it. So So the market failed for this particular weaver. It didn't work. So obviously he would have sold less than what he should have sold in that market, right? And similarly, there was another stall where there was a jamdani from Bangladeshi some company. So where I went there and I had a tool, by the way. I mean, to tell whether it's a pure silk or not. We had developed a small tool which can instantly tell whether a particular product is a pure silk or pure wool and all of that. So I tested. I was convinced that this particular sari was handmade. But when I went to the next stall and I asked, he said this is jamdani and it is a silk blended sari, and it costed 4,000 rupees. So from a value proposition, it was nice. But when I looked at the backside of the sari, it was not jamdani. So because all the threads were cut, and then I tested the fabric composition, it came as 100% polyester. Now, and I'm sure, customer would negotiate with him and say, finally buy it for say 2,000 or 2,500, but it's still worth 500 rupees sari, right? So this is where the market is failing. So because the customer is not able to say a product is genuine or not, okay? And here if you see, naturally you can expect that this jamdani, whatever imitation jamdani product person would have made far more profit than the genuine, say, craft seller. So, so this is one challenge of craft. And second challenge is that, like what Priya was mentioning about, you had different markets, 1, 2, 3 markets, right? The segment 3, what she was talking about, there's not much. So from technology perspective, most of that this is a significant chunk, is when it comes to technology, they are on the fringes of the technology and they have not been inclusive. Whereas if you see Walmarts or some of the big stakeholders, their supply chain networks are so integrated. The moment one soap is sold in some particular corner of the country, the person sitting in Delhi would know that there's one soap sold. That's a kind of integrity in their supply chains have. So what we tried to do is, the moment market fails, okay, so what has to happen is, ideally the government has to come, and that is called regulatory. So basically somebody has to regulate it, saying that, okay, this is handmade and this is not handmade. So government has tried with something called handloom mark, and they have khadi, they have whole lot of marks are there, India handloom brand. But what happens is, even these, how are they given? They audit, they visit some place and they have looms and they'll give some certificate or some tags. Now you can put these tags in anything, silk mark, handloom mark. So naturally, it is audit based and human driven. So people have incentives to issue it to wrong persons, So this whole regulatory business is also failing. So handloom mark, for example, when an article was published about what we do, the first person, somebody called at 7:30 in the morning. It was a very senior officer from railways who said that, we buy about 200 crore worth bed linen, which is supposed to be handmade. Okay. And even if you see any white bed linen in all trains, they will have a small blue label called handloom mark. Okay. The label is there. But he said it is, he thinks that more than 90% of these are not handmade. Okay. This is the situation. So one is, there is market has failed. The second is, a regulatory mechanism has failed. So that means we are leaving this sector to die a natural death. Okay, while it is important from environmental perspective, it is important from social perspective, considering, like Shruti was mentioning, 90% of our country's jobs are informal. So this is also complete informal economy. With such a scale of population, we need more jobs, we need quality of jobs. So, and then again, cultural perspective also, it's very important, because this craft is something, which is rich. So inherently rich, and it is far more rewarding to the person who creates it, right? So, but if the market fails, this patterny person, he would have done the weaving for say 3 to 6 months he would have taken to make this product. And when he comes to the market, this is what he faces, saying that aapka product, your product is not silk, your product is not say genuine. How does he feel, right? So that is something that we are now working on. So what we have developed is technologies, IoT based technologies, which can say a product is handmade or not. Okay. So in this case, there is an IoT device which captures the proof of work. Means, there's a handloom weavers, there's a small device which is fixed on a handloom, and it can measure how much of work has been done on the handloom. And then there is a QR code which is woven. Traditionally, if you see labels are stitched or they have heat sealed onto the product, but in our case, what we have innovated is it is woven into a product. So that has to be done on the loom itself. It cannot be done post-loom production. So with these technologies, when the consumer scans, he or she should be able to see the complete journey of the product, where it has been made, who has made it, and even live video. So many of our customers, what they do is every product which is made has a live video of the specific product on the loom. So where customer also connects with the whole journey and experience of how this product has been created. Okay, this is one. The second aspect of it is that now we say environmentally crafts are far more sustainable, right? But where is the data? So how sustainable are they? Say for example, now today we talk about cook stoves which are given for free because they have carbon credits being generated and marketed. Okay, so if cook stoves can generate kind of carbon credits, why not the whole craft sector, right? So because any industrial sector, a lot of carbon is kind of captured there. So this is naturally eco-friendly. So what we are looking at is, where is the data? Now, how eco-friendly is, say, crafts sector is something that we are working on. Yeah, this is what we do, and hope it answers your questions, Pooja.
That was a very interesting take on being able to quantify the emission reductions of the craft sector, Vijay. Hopefully, that is something that could attract some climate financing in the future.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think I'll come back to you, Dr. Toolika, and I'll also, segue from what Vijay was mentioning. Now, the good part is that there is so much demand from consumers that now people feel compelled to use machine-produced, products that are equivalent to the craft space. How do you equip people and students of the institute to be able to balance the demands of contemporary fashion and traditional craftsmanship?
Yeah. Thank you, Pooja. I think this discussion has raised so many points that we talk about on a daily basis because, as very rightly pointed out, there's this dichotomy. You can't decide. So many people say, machine made is important. And if it has to be cheap, it has to be machine made. Or if it has to be, handcrafts can only be for the elite sector because it, takes so much time and energy of people to make that. And of course, if you pay people properly, so there are multiple things here. And very rightly, as we were discussing the other day, and Shruti pointed out just now that, you can't have 9 to 5 jobs in a village kind of economy. It is integrated. Everybody's working together. But then we talk about formalization of things like, Suruchi mentioned about the mitti, the soil of different places. We need to do all of this. So I think we really need to look at things from a different lens. We now need to not think with a very colonized kind of a mind, but the training to the students. And that's what we try, though we are very small, and this needs to multiply across the country, looking at the population that this country has and the kind of population it exports across the world, that, this understanding of a way of life which crafts have. And you cannot say that every craft is eco-friendly. because it depends on the material you're using. It depends on how much carbon footprint has gone into procuring that material to be able to create something. So again, if we look at it, like I said, with a different lens, and maybe I think of a craft that I can create with the material, and I think material here is very important, with the material that I see around me in a certain radius, in a certain area where, okay, I'm not saying that as far as my hands reach or as far as my eyes can see, but a little more than that. And from that material, if we create something, obviously carbon footprint is going to be less. And if people in that area consume that product, which is what crafts were actually, whether it was India or any other country, when we look at history again and again. And I think that is why my interest lies in history, to understand how people used to sustain, with the products they had, with people, how it integrated. If jams were made from a particular apple and sold to people, how far did those sales go? Did it really include so many ships and so much of, carbon footprint, as we would say now? So this kind of globalization I see happening again and again in history. And, it's not that it's just happening now. It has happened thousands of years ago, and then it sort of died down, and then it happened again. And so these things keep coming back. And when we are concerned as to how do we educate the young about it, so like I said, we try and look at it from a different lens. We feel that people who are selling products, for example, the person with the paitani sari, so they should know ins and outs of what they are doing, and people will mistrust them because there's a huge market that lies, blatantly lies. And you see that on online. I mean, you see that on Amazon. You see it everywhere. You will find a kota sari for 400 rupees at Amazon, which is just not possible. If a weaver weaves that sari with the kind of material that you expect him to weave, anything less than 2000 is very difficult to create. So, and then, of course, I think the use of technology and AI in that is really helpful. So in our curricula, as you pointed out, we are trying to integrate IoT and AI so that, people don't look at craft as something which is like really very old and, traditional only. It has to be contemporarized. It has to be made for the modern market. Like, there was a book on textiles in which Rosemary Krill writes that for the Western markets, the lotuses turn to tulips. So you have to create what people like, whether it's a textile design print, as she was talking about lotuses to tulips, or it is the weave or whatever is required by the contemporary market. And let us say, if even today, it's surprising that people wear less of saris, but they sell maximum amount of saris because people want to continue with the traditionality of, garments and things like that. So I think as an institute, our focus lies on making people understand that how you are going to use your material. Our focus is material based. And in any case, craft is material based. If you look at craft in India, and if you go back to the languages that were spoken, nowhere you will find the word designer. The word does not exist. What do you see? Kumhar, Lohar, Sunar, everything is material based. So how do you use that material to create a particular product, which is the need of the hour of that society? And it's very interesting that people say, they freeze India's traditional things in time, as if things have not changed. So again, that is a colonial mindset. Things are changing, they keep changing. So you cannot say that Indian clothes are like costume and not fashion. It is fashion. What people like to wear at a particular point in time, at a particular place, is fashion. And that is how we, work with our curricula to make students understand that what is the value of handcrafting, how much of handcrafting, and what tool can you use to say that if you're using this tool, it can still be handcrafted. Like somebody just asked a question that why aren't tailors or tailoring considered handcraft? It is very much a handcraft. It is considered, though unfortunately people have not taken that into account for a very long time. But at IICD, we do take it into account and we are working with it. We are working with hand stitches also. So we are teaching everything to the students. and then there has to be a balance in, for example, a person only earns 20,000 rupees a month. Now, if he buys an original Paithani sari, he cannot feed his entire family then, in any case. So then for him to buy the machine woven saris is an option. And when you talk to weavers and you tell them that why are you, losing out on handloom? Why do you do machine? They say, if we don't do machine, China will do it. And they will send things. So where are we wrong if we are doing machine made? So I think it is not an easy answer. And that is why I think we need to train our youngsters and the consumers first to be able to consume less, consume good. And if we have machine made, yes, if we have the facility of, whatever machines, let us use that. But the handlooms should continue because there are patrons. There is a market for that. And so both will continue. We cannot say that this is good or this is bad or how. So our curricula has to deal with the intricacies of all these things. How to work with the material for the contemporary needs. So like, Suruchi was talking about the soil. We worked with British Council to create products, pottery products for the European market. And what did we realize? That we need higher temperatures. We worked at different kilns. And in spite of thinking and creating all those products, the biggest disadvantage is how to transport that material. It's not easy like textile. And there will be breakage. It'll be a huge carbon footprint. So, of course, we can create, but how viable is it to create such a thing and send it there? Why not make it for the local market? So there are many, many questions, many things. And I think our curriculum becomes strong because we don't look at crafts only as something of the past, but we definitely do history of crafts, but we look at techniques, tools, we look at it as science, of material, whatever material you're using, whether it's wood, metal, stone, textile, every material, you have to understand the science of the material, and then to work on design, contemporary needs, marketing, and then, of course, projects to be able to create for a particular client. Because it's not, that you just create a piece of art. You are creating something which is for a consumer. So will the consumer like it? You have to have a persona for whom you are creating this product. So this is how our curricula revolves, and this is our regular program. Apart from those, we do a lot of projects in the villages where, we train, we give skills to people in multiple crafts, and then we link them to business houses. And I think if all of us, the different stakeholders, we work together, I'm sure we'll be able to, it'll take time, but we'll be able to create our own standardization and our own मापदंड जिसको हिंदी में बोलते हैं, to create our own value systems, our own standardizations for looking at crafts, and to be able to look at sustainability, to be able to look at economical inclusion of the family, and multiple things in the craft sector. Yeah, I think I've said a lot. I'll stop now. So yeah, we work accordingly. Thanks, Pooja.
Thank you, Dr. Toolika. I think surely material science plays a huge role in being able to imbibe the right kind of perspectives to the people in the craft sector, so that they're able to contemporize what they do, but with some amount of innovation and adaptation based on what's available right now, while still retaining the essence of their indigenous practices, right? So I see a lot of organizations innovating in this space as well, to how can they still retain the essence of that craft while adapting it to what is the material available right now. So my question next would be to Suruchi. What are the kind of innovations that you see a need for in the craft space? What are some kind of pain points, pain areas, or opportunities for improvement where you believe these innovations can play a part?
Yeah, so, innovations is one thing, of course, so I'll divide this answer into two parts. So, of course, recognizing the nuances and challenges in crafting, low carbon impact models is crucial. And while innovation remains paramount if new value add has to be made, like, when I spoke about the scientific approach, if that can be taken in other industries, then why not craft? Why do we stay away from it? And, it of course makes businesses more future ready, and it is essential to acknowledge the existing climate channels. So, but, besides doing that, I would like to also go a little backwards and talk about, the existing climate mitigation mechanisms that are already available and are intrinsic part of the craft value chain traditionally, and many of which are linked to indigenous territories. So, for example, what is the definition of skill development vis-a-vis the indigenous knowledge? And so, and I felt that, the definition and the idea of India 3, I would like to just link it to this as well. So the economic policies and the new development models that have come up, it's important that they take cognizance of the cultural, economic, ecological assets that are already present, in the territory that you're trying to enter. Plus, what is the community asset here? So, for example, the Kuch Bandiya community, which is, it's a subcaste of the Kanjar community, and they are there in the central and the western part of India. Now, traditionally, as a nomadic and an Adivasi community, they've had access to these neglected landscape, and they've used khas plant, the roots of it, to make brush. Now, this brush, it's called kuchi, and it helps in applying starch on the yarn to prepare it for warping. And it has been used by, the Kaithon community in Kota, and as well as, Banarsi weavers as well. But now that, the link for the Adivasi community, the, Kuch Bandiya community, to access these neglected landscapes is totally, it's broken for a reason that, forest and wildlife legislations are such that they do not have access to it. Now, when they do not have access to it, even the younger generation is not interested because the opportunities don't exist. So what happens to this rung, which is the India 3, which has so much potential already that is existing, and how do you optimize that? So that is a big question. And Madan Meena, who is who's at the helm of the Adivasi community, he shared it with us that most skill agencies, which are led by the government or the corporates, they speak about, vocational training. So of course, by providing this vocational training, the mandate is, okay, they'll become plumbers or electricians or some kind of laborers in the factory. But what is essentially, and this is such a potent statement, and it really shook us, that what we are doing essentially is delinking them and de-skilling them from their bioregions. So I think, skill mapping of bioregions while we are doing development activities or creating projects, it's crucial that, and that there is where the path lies for equitable growth models, which aligns very well with your SDGs also. And, because in the, the paper that 200 million artisans had published, we understood that, there are more than 11 SDGs that craft sector complies with and is uniquely positioned to access and talk about. But these are the channels, that really need to be strengthened. The other, pain point that I would, or, point of concern I would like to say is how, we sensitize the communities at the grassroots level, and what is the capacity building that we are doing. So, for example, when you're talking about also introducing any climate mitigation tool on the ground level, first, it is important to understand the need of the said intervention with the community itself. The community also has to have a buy-in, and that it will not happen with blind dialogue. It is a consistent, intervention that is needed. So achieving daily economic sustenance is more important, and it overshadows the ecological concerns that are attached to any vertical, of the supply chain. So, for example, if we speak about water, now in Kala Dera or Sanganer, as I was mentioning, these are water-intensive supply chains. So the accessibility of the primary resource, which is water, it will not pose since it's not posing an immediate threat to the community right now, it will not become a point of discussion till bore wells are up and running, which is the main source of water access. So then what do you do? How do you talk to them? Now that is very, very important. So there has to be, this social cost that has to become part of any project design, regular sensitization and mechanisms that, will help exhibit benefits of the existing best practices. And these are some of the things that we've been able to learn through the panels that we've been running through the last 7 months. So, for example, and I've seen it through primary research that I've done, that ETPs have been installed as part of a development project in Sanganer. But, there is no monitoring or, a long-term commitment to it, that, okay, are they functional? Why are they not functional? What does one do to upgrade this technology and for the community to really own it up? Kala Dera also, we saw that, okay, the rainwater harvesting facility or water recharge that was functional in a community, in an individual land, was not functional that effectively in the community land. Now, why is that so? Because again, the involvement of the community is a must, and how, the agencies do that. So for in Sanganer, again, the water of the river bodies has, it's absorbed the bleach and the synthetic colors for 3 decades. And of course, there's water contamination. But, the point is that we have to tail back to understand why this has happened, because there was no formal training that was given when the dyes were introduced as to, what is the color chemistry, what is the proportion of the the water versus the dyes, for there to be less waste, to create less carbon footprint in the very first place. So those kind of discussions are very, very important, when one is looking at any kind of grassroots intervention. And just taking that thread and also talking about capacity building. So Abhilasha Bahuguna, who's part of Looms of Ladakh, and Kosha is one of the, when we did a master class with Vijaya, this is what we learned, that again, to also engage the community in any kind of digital technology, there is a lot of merit in capacity building there also, when we are looking at challenges and strategies. So one of the hurdles encountered in this case was that, data feeding at decentralized level, which is extremely critical. And Vijay's talked about the benefits of it. And but what is important is that the gradual uptake will happen only when these various generations will actually accept it. And again, that'll happen through consistent handholding by the producer in this case. So again, coming back to how producer responsibility is very, very important in fortifying these value chain concerns. And we firmly believe that social enterprises, civil society organizations, they possess the mandate, the knowledge, the agency, and the reach to effectively drive these initiatives forward.
Great. I think producer responsibility and adaptation, all of them would probably come in once the bare minimum or the fundamental is taken care of. And for ventures and that are building in the craft space, I think one of those fundamentals is capital, right? So the next question that I have is for Priya. What would you advise craft-led enterprises on how they must be able to, they can unlock catalytic capital? How are they able to, how do you think they should position what they offer in terms of results as well as impact, overall value proposition?
That's a really tough question, because I don't think it's as black and white, and the onus should not be on the craft enterprises to fortify themselves, because I would put the onus on both the investors. I would put the onus on also, folks like Toolika. I would put the onus also on other kinds of ecosystem actors, because what we need right now is some sort of consensus building on what is success. How do we define success of an enterprise? What should the metrics of success therefore look like? Because what is going to happen? Now, we live in the Shark Tank world where everybody goes and pitches, and what is now starting to happen in this Shark Tank world, as it were, is that a lot of enterprises who need money, and I agree completely with you, Pooja, that every new idea, be it for innovation, be it for testing out new approaches, be it for market scaling, be it for marketing even, you need money. And unfortunately, because we operate, or fortunately or unfortunately, because the sector operates squarely within the retail landscape, our enterprises are competing with those of the Zaras and H&Ms who have massive marketing budgets. So therefore, you also need money on that spectrum. What is happening, unfortunately, is that when you look for money, first of all, I think the literacy around why is it that you need money, and where should you look for that money? If you get the money, how do you use the money? The very basics around enterprise building is currently missing in the larger ecosystem. So, you look at 5 Instagram posts and suddenly people will be like, Priya, we want to grow our enterprise and therefore we need to dilute equity. And I'm like, but why do you need to dilute equity? Like, what is the context of diluting equity? That is not the only solution you have currently. Then you
Priya, I think your video is frozen. We can't hear you either. Am I audible? Okay, okay. That means it's not a problem with my connection. Priya? Are you still able to see Priya on call right now, or has she
No.
been dropped
No,
off?
she's not here. Yeah.
Okay, okay, right.
Ah, there you are.
No, she's here.
Okay, so power cuts happen in Bangalore. Shruti, this one is on you. Okay, so clearly, but yeah, so just to continue, and I'll try to keep it brief. So when we are talking about capital, the onus sits on three sets of stakeholders. I think one, as a community, we need to decide, what is success? What are the success metrics? Because the sector is so unbelievably unique. We need now new success metrics that are not a copy paste from the Silicon Valley. I mean, they are the poster child of success as we all know it. However, success in this sector needs to be different. It needs to be articulated differently. It needs to be quantified differently. It needs to be qualified differently. The second piece is, if we are talking about right kind of catalytic capital, right now our enterprises are looking for external financing. Our report is saying 91% are looking for external financing, 88% are self-funding. But this is a demand and supply problem. The 91% who are looking for external financing don't have access to capital because the kind of products that they are looking for does not exist in the market. Therefore, the onus is on the investor community, the investment actors, to say, hey, how do we now create products that actually work for a very, very large section of enterprises who are building impactful solutions, potentially scalable solutions, and also hit all the three check boxes of culture, cultural, social, and environmental sort of, impact in some form or the other. And the last piece now is when I come to enterprises, we also have to give them some benefit of doubt. We need to understand a bulk of the enterprises who build any kind of business models in this sector, they first do it out of passion. They come out of NIFT, they will come out of uh, TIS, or a lot of these development organizations, or they have worked as a development professional and they've seen the challenges on ground and they'll set out to solve for it. These are not people who are trained, coming out of the ISBs and the IIMs and so on and so forth of the world, which means the language of business and finance and tech does not come naturally to a lot of them. 50% of the enterprises we mapped also happen to be women. Now, which means access to financial literacy is an inherent challenge, and often an inherent challenge, especially if you're working among communities or in scenarios or situations where this access has not been readily available to you. Which means what we can, the best as enterprises we can do is read up or at least arm yourself with the right kind of knowledge on what is catalytic capital. I mean, I know now we are starting to use words like this. However, what does that even mean? It took us and my team 2 years to understand what is catalytic capital. And what
Priya?
We've lost her again.
Okay. Right. I'm afraid in the interest of time, we will have to move on to our next point. And I'll segue from what Priya was mentioning. There's clearly a need for us to view investability or the kind of impact that craft organizations are making from a different lens. So my question to you, Shruti, is what would you advise fellow investors to look out for, or change in the way they're approaching craft-related investments?
Yeah. So I do acknowledge that I may be the only person speaking investment in this forum right now. But what I want, so I think as investors, we need to educate ourselves first, right? So the way investment work is also a lot of FOMO, like fear of missing out. So one success story leads to all investors flop. You must have read the news on Fab India getting considered by Tata now. That may be the craft industries or the handloom, the handmade industries, like the first signaling effect of that success in the way commercial people look at investments, look at um, can be is possible, and that opens the door to then varied levels and stages of business being, like, at least the investment mindset being open to considering um, handmade, handloom, this sector as a investable sector with commercial capital, growth capital, um, and building markets around it. Right now, there's no market building happening. It is just kind of everybody trying to figure out who's doing what. So my in general, when we speak within the investment community or investor community, is that what are you learning? Which company? How do you figure out this company is better than this? So, which is also a segue from what Priya was saying, that how do you know that this company A is better than company B? And the onus is on the ecosystem then to give us that cheat sheet to say what success looks like. So we would say, okay, my LP from the Silicon Valley is asking for these term sheets and this is what it is. But you are saying this doesn't apply to your business. Okay, so what applies to your business? That we don't know. So, and that is also an onus on us to realize, to understand, and put pen to paper to say, okay, this doesn't look like success, but this looks like. And hence, as Upaya, like for us, success is where we see we see a lot of power in job quality being an indicator, because it talks very directly to the revenue streams. An entrepreneur may come to me saying, I pay, living wages of 900 rupees per day to 5,000 artisans that I'm engaging with. And I'm like, okay, 900 into 5,000 doesn't even match your revenue right now. People don't realize what they're saying, because the impact numbers on jobs matches directly. It can be triangulated directly to your financial performance. And then you are talking about the other things that come, which is benefits and upskilling and partnerships, etc. So from us, like with our Dignified Jobs Collaborative, where we engage with a lot of investors ourselves, is that can we use things, metrics, simple metrics, like look at the job quality, what is the income being passed on to the weavers, artisans, what is the attrition, stickiness of clusters with a particular company, how much is being given out as how much you are ensuring that they are not being harassed, they are not being exploited. So those kind of basic minimum is where because you have to think, an investor is who? A chartered accountant, a financial management expert, somebody for whom it's binary. It's like the Excel sheet cells have to make sense, and you are trying to navigate them towards a business which is a craft led business. The other thing is, I think, be getting sensitized to, with organizations like ISCD or others, to what is the ethos of a craft market, of a craft led business enterprise. I think those kind of initiatives are needed even for investors. It's not just the enterprises who need to be educated. So that's something. And then I think the risk to acknowledge, because there's a lot of capital now coming in towards climate change and how to address that. And I think as investors, we have to see the potential in how craft-led businesses are providing a potential solution and not look at it from an angle of just cottage industry. You have to get out of labels, and get into solutions. So if it is solving a problem in my pathway towards solving climate change issue, then it is investable. And then you talk about what kind of capital doesn't kill the business, but helps it grow further. So I think as investors, this is where we have to look at whether it is a $50,000 check size or a $1 million check size, where is it plugging that gap, is what we have to look at. But that's from my side.
Thanks, Shruti. So I'm afraid we've run out of time to ask any further questions, but I see a lot of questions on chat, that have come in from our participants. If it's okay with you, dear panelists, if we can pass on some of these questions, and if you are able to address them, we'd like to compile it and share it with our participants a little later. Right, and I also see, and thanks for sharing that, Priya. I think based on the point that you were building on earlier about getting the language right in being able to convey the impact and value proposition of organizations in the craft sector. Thanks for sharing the information that people can go through. I see that you mentioned enterprises and investors must look at how they can use the right kind of language around capital, right? So thanks for that. Overall, I think based on everything that I've been able to gather so far, clearly there is a lot of work to be done in terms of building awareness around material science, like what Dr. Toolika was mentioning, how to equip craft enterprises to be able to utilize the right kind of knowledge, which will help them bridge their traditional practices and being able to contemporize them for what is required currently. Think adaptation, knowledge around adaptation technology, knowledge around how investors speak, right? How do they position the value and impact of their organizations? Knowledge around how can they utilize technology to be able to address some of their pain points and being able to position their products better out there to their targeted markets. So clearly there's a lot of work related to generating awareness. And I think several of us here are part of ecosystem enabling organizations that work actively towards this, right, to be able to do that. And we too at Fashion Revolution are very invested in this space and will continue to work in enabling craft-related organizations in being able to adapt and scale their organizations further. And anybody who's logged in today among our participants, whether you are an organization that is working in this space, whether you are a tech solutions company, or whether you are an organization that works in policy related work, we invite you to participate with us and engage with us and build better impact in this space. So I'd like to conclude by thanking all of our panelists for offering us such enriching insights and being here, taking the time out to participate on this panel discussion today. And of course, I also thank all our participants who have come here and who've been so active on chat and have asked so many questions and have shown a lot of interest in engaging and learning more about the space. We promise to get back with answers to the questions that you've posed out here. And then I think in conclusion, I would also like to remind you that Fashion Revolution Week is still going to be there till the end of this month, till 24th actively across India. But in Bangalore, we have an event on the 28th. So do stay tuned in and participate whenever you can so that we're able to amplify this movement around sustainable fashion. So I thank everyone once again. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you so much, Pooja.
Thank
And
you.
I would also like to say that we have a very interesting collab tomorrow evening. It's a panel discussion looking at design for regeneration. It is in collaboration with Fashion Revolution. And we look forward to seeing you all join us as audience. Thank you. And thank you, Pooja.
Thank you very much to your panelists and everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.